All right, welcome back to the show. Welcome back to the Dad Bod Brigade podcast. My name is Dylan, and we have a very special guest with us in here today who is an expert in some very critical and very hot topics in the news in the world today. But I'd like to introduce Mr. Daniel Dluzneski. Dan, welcome to the show.
Dylan, thank you. I appreciate you having me on an important subject, an uncomfortable subject, but one that's needed to be out there for awareness.
Yeah, absolutely. So a quick background, Dan is a 24-year veteran of the Secret Service, retiring as a lieutenant. He was part of the Canine Bomb Detection Unit. After his time in the Secret Service, he was the coordinator of emergency management, safety, and security for Pinellas County Schools in Tampa, Florida. He has orchestrated and supervised over 100 active shooter drills. He pioneered and standardized the school emergency plans, and he was responsible for the security of over 140 schools and 104,000 students. Is that right?
Yes, correct.
Awesome.
Yep.
And he was also the author of this book, which is out on Amazon. The book is called The First 5 Minutes, a school shooting survival guide for administrators and teachers. It also comes with a downloadable school emergency plan that teachers and administrators can use, as well as a downloadable quick reference card that can be used for additional training, attaching to administrators or teachers' ID cards or that kind of thing. So, Dan, I wanted to make sure I read all of that background correctly, because that's quite the report card of experiences. So I'm pumped to have you on here. Why don't you give me just a little bit of a background on why you wrote this book, how your background ties into this, and you know we'll get into kind of more about this as we go through it.
Yeah, it's something that again I hadn't really thought about writing a book. When I retired from the Secret Service, I came down here to Florida from Washington D.C. I was able to spend my entire career in Washington D.C. And when I came down here, it was just, I'm retired. Retire, grab a beer, sit on the beach, I'm done. And at the time, my ex-wife now, at the time, she's like, you got to do something. You have, it's an alpha personality. After 3 months, you're just driving yourself crazy because, again, you were in the Army, Dylan. I don't know how long it took you to settle down, but just that routine, the routine of the shift work, of making sure you're there on time, making your uniform and all this stuff. It took forever. I mean, I talk to some of my buddies, it's still the same way. I mean, they have dreams about it. They, still wake up going, I got to get to work. It's just something that's ingrained in you after that number of years. And I came down here and we just get out the stress, just relax. Very hard to do, again, for an alpha personality that had, is kind of a control freak. So this position opened up with the county school system, and it fit my resume. And I thought, what the hell? I'll give it a shot. I'll work full time. It doesn't matter. So I got the job, and a very good supervisor at the time. I wish he had stayed there longer, but he was just this guy that just believed in this security. We all went through Columbine, and, he had read about that and studied that. And he said, this was a guy that would walk into schools. He had that kind of power. He was an assistant superintendent. He had the kind of power. He could walk into schools and have the staff there. He says, bring the principal out. And the principal come out and he says, I'm a school shooter. He says, I'm about to shoot up your school. What are you going to do? And he would just stand there and wait for them. And they would be obviously be in shock, thinking it was some kind of joke or something like that. He said, I'm not joking. He says, let's find out what you're going to do, unannounced. You can't do that today. I wish I could, but unannounced drills would just drive people crazy, and there'd probably be some lawsuits in there because somebody would have a heart attack with something like that. But anyway, he just said to me, look, it's yours. It's your baby. However, it was just me. I got 100,000 students, 140 schools. I had no staff, no secretary, nothing. It's kind of funny because I would go to these conferences, and you mentioned North Carolina was a conference there. And some of these people would only have like 30,000 students, and they'd have assistant directors and they'd have secretaries and staff. I'm like, are you kidding me? I said, I got 100,000 kids. It's just me. So I said, all right, I'll go with it. And I hated to sit at a desk. I just hated it. And I said, you know what? I am going to visit every one of these schools and make an appointment with every one of these principals so they know my face and see me face to face. Not that I had autonomy. I couldn't go in and say, do this now.
Right.
There was still a hierarchy. But it took me a year, but I met every one of those 140 principals within a year at all those schools. And I told them, anytime you have an active shooter drill or a drill that you think you need things to fix on, call me, email me. I'm going to be there. So that's why I put in there over, I don't know how many, well, I never counted them. I knew it was over 100 of these drills that I either observed or I was a part of, or I supervised at these different schools. And the nice thing about my county was it was so diverse, which it just made a big difference. North County, pretty white, very elite. You come down to Center County, it's diverse, Hispanic, Latinos, Black. Then you get to South County, which is strictly mostly low income, Black, Hispanic. And it just was a great experience that they had such diversity in this county, very dense county. We are I think the 6th largest school system in Florida and something like the 27th in the nation, just in size. So it was, to me, kind of amazing because think back, I'm up in Washington, D.C., coming to move to Florida. That's where retirees go. And they told me this about the schools, 100,000 kids. Wait a minute, this is where retired people go, not kids.
Right.
Oh, no. There's a lot of people down here, and they keep coming, obviously, from these states like New York and California coming to Florida. Anyway, I kind of got off topic here about the book. After Uvalde, and if people aren't familiar with Uvalde, they should be because the media just concentrated on it so much. Law enforcement response was just completely, it was just
lacking. Yeah.
Horrible. These guys stood around for 45 minutes and they didn't do anything, thinking it was a hostage situation. They didn't have really good, authority, leadership to do anything. The radios were different. It was a complete mess. Now, with that being said, yeah, they made big mistakes. But before all this happened, that school still was not safe and secure. They had broken locks. They had doors wedged open. I don't know where the security guard went. There was a teacher smoke, whatever was happening. But the main focus, which correctly focused on the law enforcement or unresponse, that they didn't respond to it. So after that, I was so angry. And this was after some of your biggest ones. We go back to Sandy Hook, and that's in a town called Newtown, which was one town across from where I grew up in Monroe, Connecticut. This is in Newtown, Connecticut. And if you look at Newtown overall, let's say you can imagine a Currier and Ives, painting. That's what this town looked like, this old New England style of town, still like that today. Where this school was Sandy Hook was like a subsidiary of Newtown, just a small little town, on a narrow road behind a fire department, a fire station where you couldn't even see the school. It just, again, when somebody says to me, never happened here, that's what I would point at, something like that going, this school was obscure in this area that is, Anyway, that happened. And then Parkland, Marjorie Stoneman Douglas down here in Florida, a 3-floor school, very big school, where all kinds of mistakes were made, where you didn't have the school resource officers respond. And then they had a fire alarm go off and the teachers and students didn't know how to respond. We can kind of get into that in a little bit later, but about drilling. But anyways, after Uvalde, I was so angry. And my current wife, she just said, look, you got to get it out. You got to vent. I had never written a book before. I didn't know what the hell was involved. I had no idea how to do this. Luckily, she had written a book previously and she turned me on to this online support group for authors. And they led me through the whole thing of getting this done. So, but again, I write how I talk, which is a horrible way of writing. I mean, it is. Horrible way of writing. You read a sentence, and then the person will look at you. What are you talking? I don't know what you're talking about here. So I had to go through all kinds of editing. Anyway, I wanted it short, concise, and a guidebook. I didn't want this thing where we see a 200 and 300 page diatribe with all this edge-speak that's going to sit on a shelf and collect dust. That's all it's going to do. You read some of this crap, I'm telling you, Dylan, it's boring.
Right.
It really is.
Well, what I really liked about the book too, though, is you weren't just trying to pitch some like fancy new technology and some, shiny toy and some end all be all solution, because a lot of people, especially now that these school shootings have become like such huge media like focuses, and obviously it goes down the route of gun control this and gun control that. But the problem I've seen with a lot of the people that are in the industry to even like try and help or try and solve this problem is they always have some new tool or some new fancy shiny thing that can solve all the problems overnight. Oh, I can fix this overnight. And what I appreciated about your book specifically is you weren't trying to do that. You were trying to prepare the parents the students and the teachers and administrators at these schools to be prepared, to be alert, to be aware, and to get kind of a background and an understanding of how you train and get ready for this thing, because it's not going to just end. It's not something that is just going to go away tomorrow because of some shiny new tool. And so I really appreciated that about your book. And it kind of ties back into what we focus on our show here, is that teaching situational awareness, raising kids to be strong and alert and kind of fundamentally just sound in their surroundings, and even for parents to do the same thing. And I know before we got on, you were talking to me about, parents need to be aware of what the schools that their kids are attending are or are not doing in preparation for these kind of things. And so that was what I really appreciated about this book as well.
Yeah, no, I agree. And again, we'll get into that, talk about the parents, because I think I told you, and your audience can know this, when I first did these podcasts, it was talking to the teachers, administrators, and they were like, look, our hands are tied. We're told that this is the way we're going to run these drills, and I don't want my job to be in jeopardy, so I have to do this, even though I agree with you, is that the kind of drill we should be running. So I got very fortunate with, again, I didn't have the autonomy, but I did have the backing to have these drills run the correct way. And I tell you, when I first started, they were still dealing with codes. And I know there's schools out there that still deal with codes. I like, what are you doing? No, there's no codes. No, right. Because you say a code red, it sounds like there's something dangerous. I don't know what that is.
Nobody does.
It's plain language. Plain language. We're in a lockdown, lockout, bomb threat, fire, whatever the heck it is. You're not going to scare anybody. Just talking plain language. So that took a while to get out of these codes. And the other thing was with recently, which I, again, really emphasized, just before I left, they said, look, why can't we have the classroom doors locked during class time? And I had teachers just said, oh my God, no, we got kids going to the bathroom and they're coming in and out, this and that. You know what? Tough. You're already one step ahead of the game by having the classroom door locked during class time.
Right.
Because all you got to do after that is as a lockdown situation is the most simple thing, Dylan. Doors locked, turn the lights off, close the blinds. You sit on the floor quietly, away from the windows and doors. You silence your phone. You don't listen to any announcements. You do not open that door. No bells, whistles, nothing. You're waiting for the good guys to come.
Right.
And I mean good guys to come to unlock your door.
Right.
Not stand outside the door and say, I'm a police officer so-and-so, let me in.
Right. It's the same thing with the announcements too, because a lot of times, like even in your book, I think you mentioned this, a shooter could come in, take the front office secretary and tell her to say what he wants on camera, what he or she wants on camera or on the intercom. And so you never really know. And it's the same thing when I was at Fort Hood during the second shooting that happened on base, on a military base. We had soldiers come bringing guns on and shooting other soldiers, which is nuts by itself. But same idea. The simplest technique of locking a door or making it harder for someone to get in. I mean, it's the same way with protecting your house, right? The 5 Ds of deterring, criminals, right? But locking a door is such a simple step. And if it's done every single day for every single class, you don't have to worry about, oh, did I forget to lock the doors? There's a shooter here now. Now I need to think about going to do that,
Right, exactly. And while we're talking on that subject, let's play devil's advocate, because I get a lot of former law enforcement, even current law enforcement, saying, well, wait a minute. They're sitting ducks in that room.
Right.
No, we don't want that. We want them running out of that room and going outside and going to a designated area. And you're like, and I swear to God, I talked to parents and I said, can you ask your kids, what they're doing during drills? I've had kids, probably your age, you said your son was 8 years old. I got 8 or 9 year olds that say to their parents, Mom, why would I run out into the hallway? I don't know where the gunman is. I don't want to get shot. These are kids saying this. I said, I want this kid on my show.
Right.
So it's like, but this idea that they're sitting ducks because they think that a shooter is somehow going to bust through that door. Dylan, it's happened once.
Right. One
time in the hundreds of thousands, or how many thousands of school shootings we've had out in Red Lake, Minnesota. It was a Native American reservation. And the kid shot his grandfather, came in, shot the security officer, shot a police officer, grabbed the police officer's shotgun, went in, and shot at that door lock 3 times. 3 times, that door still didn't open. Finally, he said, you know what? I'm going to bust through the window. He busted through the window and got in that way and shot the teacher.
Yeah.
So they know, even as insane as they are, that it takes time. it takes too much time to try to shoot out a lock. Now, we're not going to get into that because, again, I'm not going to play hypotheticals.
Right.
But if you're being targeted, that's a wholly different situation. If that shooter's targeting someone, yeah, he'll probably work on that door forever because he's after that individual. But the majority of the time, if we've seen is, and I like the Nashville video, you see that shooter shoot out the glass doors and they're walking through and they're checking the doors as they go, lock, move on, open, I'm going in. Right. So it's something very simple and basic that if that door is locked, they're not getting in. And I've had, of course, some parents say, well, my 17-year-old said, we're doing this training to throw things at the shooter in case they get in. What am I supposed to do, Mom, if a gunman gets into the classroom? Well, you know what? If that gunman's working on the door, what are you going to do? You got file cabinets. You got that teacher's desk that weighs a ton. Barricade the door.
Right.
Simple. If they're working on that door, barricade the door. Just try to think for yourself.
That was what they even taught us in the military. We're on a military base. We're all trained soldiers in combat with firearms and close quarters and hand-to-hand combat. And our procedure was lock down and barricade in place. There was no, let's run to the arms room and everybody get a rifle. Let's go hunt this guy down. No, it was we barricade in place. We lock down until you hear the all clear. And that was even our procedure. And we talked about this too, and not to get into the whole like concealed carrying on school campuses or anything, but it was always a rebuttal with why soldiers couldn't conceal carry, at least when I was in. Because, what's the description of the shooter? Oh, he's a soldier in uniform running around with a pistol. Oh, okay. Well, now every guy that's got a concealed carry permit's out here looking for a shooter and they're all carrying their pistols. So it adds to too much confusion. It's the same reason why you don't want everyone just running around because it's chaos. As soon as shit hits the fan, it's chaos, and you don't want people, or kids for that matter. I wouldn't want my son and his teacher to be trying to lead him out of the school based on her experience in what, teaching? No.
Exactly. No, I absolutely agree. And there's two things I want to mention before we continue. And I'm not going to forget about it. Two things I want to mention. The one reason that I like going on these podcasts now is that I hear a lot of this stuff because I'm on LinkedIn, and there are a lot of companies out there that sell this kind of stuff. You've got something called Run, Hide, Fight, which I'm sure you're familiar with. Now, Run, Hide, Fight was created back by Homeland Security many, many years ago. And the Houston Police Department did a video. It's a good video. I mean, it's old now, but you've got that movie theater narration over there, guy all dressed in black, and he comes in and they tell you, if you can run, run. Okay, you can run. If you can't, you hide. And if it comes to it, then you fight. But it's made for the corporate world, right, for adults.
Not 5-year-olds.
Like no, somehow this transferred over to schools. Like, are you kidding me? And I have it, I swear to God, in my county system since I left, they said, well, we're not going to call it Run, Hide, Fight. We're going to call it options-based training. We're going to give the teacher the option of either locking down in the classroom or running out. What? What about the fight part? Well, we'll do it by age. Not for elementary or middle, but maybe high school, they can still fight the shooter. Like, oh my God, what happened to common sense?
Right.
So that not only Run, Hide, Fight it drives me crazy that you would think that you would run out of a classroom not knowing where the shooter is. And there is technology out there there is no technology out there that shows you where this gunman is going. It costs millions of dollars to even do that for a school system. But there's also something out there called Alice Training. And Alice Training is a private marketing company that sends individuals there, and you get certified in 2 days, and you come back and you can train the trainer. Alice Training is another acronym, and I know you know acronyms in the military. I had acronyms in the Secret Service. It drives you crazy. Anyway, it stands for Alert, Lockdown, Inform, Counter, and Evacuate. Okay, so we'll break it down. Alert, perfect. That's what we want. I have systems in my school here where it's automatic alert. It comes out automatically. You push a button, it comes out whatever it says. Perfect. Lockdown. That's exactly what you should be doing anyways. You're locking down, okay? The next one is inform, and they tell you someone, a designated person, is supposed to inform the entire school system where the shooter is going by looking at cameras of where this gunman is going. Not possible. Mm-hmm. There's no technology now that has that, right? No. What are you doing? The counterpart, see, whoever created this, he's former law enforcement also. He said, well, I don't want the fight part in there. We're going to change that wording to counter, meaning not only teachers, but students are trained to throw objects precisely all at the same time if that gunman ever gets into the classroom. And Dylan, there are videos of this Alice training showing these kids throwing what? Their phones?
Right.
Their books? What are they doing? What are they throwing things? Can you imagine? You've been in the Army. If I'm a gunman and I come in like that and they start throwing Shabby, I'm going
spraying. Yeah.
I'm being pissed off, whatever the heck is going on. So this idea that, and that's why I tell parents, if you hear any of this, if you hear the words run, hide, fight, if you hear the words options-based training, if you hear anything that says ALICE in the acronym, that's a red flag. That should raise something in you, and ask your kids, how are you drilling? Are you being trained to throw things at gunmen? Can you imagine you're going to train students hour and a half at most, hour and a half, you're going to train them to throw something precisely at the shooter. Okay. So now you wait 6 months. We don't have no training anymore. And now here comes a shooter.
Right.
So can you imagine, look, in the Secret Service, and you probably same thing in the Army, I had to qualify with my weapon every month. And that was, like I talked about, implicit memory. And the thing, that became rote. That's like athletes. They train over and over and over again.
You don't use it, you lose it. It's a perishable skill.
For an hour and a half and expect them to be an expert and throw something at someone precisely at the same time in a chaotic, horrible situation. Because I tell you, Dylan, you've been there. People are going to freeze. Yeah. You're going to forget your name. You're going to, I'm sorry, crap your pants.
I've seen it firsthand. Even when I got shot last summer, I was telling you before we got on, just something in me clicked. I was actively losing blood out of my arm. I had a sucking chest wound and was trying to, people around us were kind of freaking out. And I was like, I need a tourniquet. I need a chest seal. Let's get this going. And like, I was the one laying on the ground, bleeding out, providing instructions on what's to go because of that implicit memory that I had from all the training and the medical training that we had in the Army. But we were also trained under stress. You can't do that kind of training with kids and teachers and put them in as close to real life scenarios as we would have done in the military or in law enforcement or in the Secret Service. So you're exactly right.
Yeah, no, if I'm a parent and I hear that, no, I would be going ballistic, going absolutely not. Now, the main thing is, what can parents do? What can dads do? Look, if you hear something like this happen, there's a couple things you could do. Number one, get in front of the school board. School boards in most places will have meetings either during the day, and they definitely will have them at night. You can get a page and a half. They only give you 3 minutes. You at least can get a page and a half in there of telling them what's going on. And they're going to go, really? What kind of resources do you have? What kind of data do you have? Okay. What you're going to do is you want to go to a site called safehavensinternational.org. One word, safehavensinternational.org. It's by my mentor. The guy's name is Michael Dorn. He was a Georgia police officer, been in the business for like 30 something years. They have the data. They have the research, how these types of trainings are wrong. You're going to set up liability and litigation. There's millions of dollars that these schools have had to pay just for the drills themselves because they don't work. So that's where you're going to get your resources and your data. If they don't want to listen to you, now you got to start talking to your legislatures, your state legislatures. Say, hey, this you know what? And the schools should also be telling you when they have the drills. If you don't agree with their drills, you pull the kid out, or you tell the kid, look, Dad, my dad told me I'm staying in a lockout. I am not running out of this classroom. Now, I understand you're supposed to listen to the teacher, and I'm sorry if you're going to be not a bully or a troubled kid or a pain in the butt, but look, I want to stay alive. My dad said, I sit over here, lock the door, I'm good. I'm not running out of this classroom. Right. So we start getting that kind of pushback. Maybe these schools will listen because they pay for these services for these people to come in and train them on this stuff. And it's absolutely wrong thing to do.
Well, and it's all probably bureaucratic, pure political kind of, incentives into getting these programs into these school systems, especially these larger school systems, which are like, the great white buffaloes of these companies to try and sell into, especially with these fancy tools and products and everything else like that. So back to like what your kind of guide is for administrators and teachers and even, some of our dads and listeners here, what type of trainings and drills do you recommend as being most beneficial for schools and for, students to be doing? And how often are these things, supposed to be happening?
Yeah, that's the main thing. I keep it simple. The KISS system, it's lockdowns. Lockdowns have worked for a number of years. They are still, backed by psychologist associations, by the National Association of School Resource Officers. Lockdowns work. Any of these other fancy stuff, like we talked about, like a knee-jerk emotional reaction to do different type of drills or do different type of technology, stay with the lockdowns, because it's all about human responsibility. It has nothing to do with technology. There's no technology out there that's going to make you 100% safe. And in fact, it's just wasted money, especially metal detectors. A lot of schools I get will say, look, we got a grant. Parents, we're going to put in metal detectors. We're good. Don't worry about it. Your kids are safe.
That's just a facade for appearing that you're doing something, but it's solving nothing.
Nothing. It's called security theater. If I got some insane person, you think some metal detector is going to stop me from coming and shooting people? No, of course not. And you can easily still get a gun in. You're going to get it in on an athletic event on the weekend. Your buddy's going to grab your backpack, throw it through a window, whatever. It's just theater. That's all it is. It's a waste of time. So you keep it simple. Your door is already locked. Close the blinds, sit on the floor, be quiet, turn the lights off. Help is on its way. I understand the rural areas complain about this a lot, because they'll tell you, the nearest police is 10 minutes away. Well, you're waiting. I mean, you're just going to have to somehow, and like I said, something like that, if you're in a rural area where it takes that long, well, guess what? You better slow that shooter down. So you better have good fencing. You better have a lobby area where they're trapped. They can only get in one entrance. Otherwise, they're out. And you better have locks on everything. And those doors better be closed. My biggest pet peeve, there's a few of them. I can go to a high school today, any high school today, Dylan, and I can get in.
Absolutely.
Without an issue. Because there is going to be a door propped open or a door unlocked. It's these stupid triangle wedges that you see, the little wooden ones, they slip in. Why? Because a teacher stepped out for a smoke, because a kid ordered a pizza, because there's a kid late to some event, because whatever the hell reason, they want that door wedged open so they can get in or out. Do you know every shooting, well, not everyone, I can't say everyone, the majority of shootings are done by current students or by former students. And they are watching this. They know which doors are open. They know which gates are open at certain times of day. They see this stuff. And I know we wanted to talk about this because they say, Dan, you're putting out there, they know what the drills are and stuff like that. Yeah, they're going to know what the drills are, but they still are not thinking to themselves, I'm going to bust a lock to get that at certain. No, they still want to get in and look for easy victims.
Right.
So my biggest fear, obviously, is your 3 times of transition. Your arrival, which is just chaotic, obviously, your dismissal, and lunchtime. I'm telling you, it's probably going to happen eventually. I hope it doesn't, but lunchtime probably is the biggest one, because in that cafeteria, in that enclosed space, it is so loud and so many students that it would be horrible. And I only had one chance, because maybe in every state, but down here in Florida, they said, no, you're not going to run a drill during lunchtime. These kids have to eat. It's by state law. They have to eat. I'm like, well, how the hell am I going to train for this? Yeah. I figured it out. There was one day in one of our big high schools here. I said, look, can we do it on like a rainy day? Something. I have to try to test this out. So we did. I had some kids inside and some kids outside in the picnic area, and we ran a drill as if there was an active shooter there. And fortunately, it wasn't textbook, but it worked okay, because I had different assistants at different areas of the school. And these kids, we told them, look, if something bad happens, go to your whatever the next class is after lunch is where you're going to go. Yeah. So they did that. Boom, ran it, and the assistant said, "No, come this way." And do that, and it kind of worked. And in fact, you're probably of the same. Chaos actually is good in some respects, because now you've got like ants going everywhere, and this shooter doesn't have easy targets to pick out, unless he's like spraying and praying. So, sometimes chaos works for you in situations like that. But again, back to your point, you just keep it simple. You keep it at very simple, and that's where the implicit memory comes in. You drill over and over again. Now, drilling. Can you over drill? Absolutely. Sure. You sit there and be, okay, another drill. Oh my God, we got to go through this again.
Then they get complacent.
Oh, geez. Yeah. A lockdown drill, Dylan, minimum. High school. Elementary school, you may get away with 45 minutes. High school, it's over an hour. It's going to take over an hour. You got 1,000, 1,200 kids. There's no freaking way.
Yeah.
It's going to be over an hour. So what happens, and people are human, I understand this idea of unannounced. I was fortunate enough in my county, I had principals that wanted an unannounced drill. They said, I want to see how we react. But that was mostly middle and elementary school. High school is very tough to do. So I said, look, let's do it this way. During the week, just say, look, tell parents and teachers and everybody, hey, one day during this week, we're going to run a drill. Okay. So at least they can't, as you know, pre-prepare. Because what happens is going to pre-prepare? Well, they're already going to have the lights turned off and the blinds because they want to get back to teaching.
Right.
Homework. I got a test coming up. I got all this stuff. We're at a D grade school. I got pressure. So they want to get the drill over as fast as possible. It's human nature.
Right.
I mean, look at fire drills. When's the last time a kid died in a fire? It's been like 100-something years ago. They died in a fire. We have fire drills every month. You can do it blindfolded, for God's sakes. So this idea that you're going to run this drill for an hour and it just drags and you can't do it any faster. It's just the nature of the beast. So I tell teachers, you just learn this and have it implicit in your mind. This is what I need to do. Just go through the process. And you mentioned the credit card. I'll talk about that. In my book, I've got this laminated, well, I laminated it. You can laminate this quick reference card, okay? It's small enough as a credit card. It'll fit on your lanyard. Most teachers have a lanyard with their ID or a copier card. And on here, it'll tell you, you got lockdown, you got lockout, bomb threat, fire, whatever. Because as you know, Dylan, you're going to forget stuff. You're going to forget. So you look down and say, but what did I forget? Oh, geez, I forgot to turn the lights off. Whatever it was.
Right.
At least you can look through it and feel safe and going, okay, I got it. And the reason I came up with that, I have a doctor friend of mine and she goes, oh yeah, we use those all the time. I'm like, what are you talking about? She says, oh, they'll come up with like a code purple. I have no idea what that is. So I got to look on the card. There's so many colors, what purple is. So it's useful. And
absolutely. They made us carry them in the Army on like 9-line medevacs and all the other different things that we had to remember. And even like to like the core values of our unit or whatever it was, like we had to have that on us, on our person at all times, obviously like our military ID on us at all times. And so, a lot of those things, you drill those into the teachers' heads and the administrators and the staff as keeping these, quick reference guides on you. And you can eliminate a lot of that confusion and chaos when shit really does hit the fan.
Well, you and I know, no one knows how they're going to react in an emergency. You have no idea. I mean, you and I would react a certain way to certain things, but if it's something unfamiliar to us, I don't know how. I hope I would react a certain way, but maybe not.
Right.
I had a North County school assistant principal who was really into this safety and security. And she would run drills like every other month or quarterly with her people. And she had an actual incident. She had an individual across the street. This guy didn't like his mom's boyfriend, decided to grab a gun, and he started shooting up the house from the outside. Well, as he was doing that, he's kind of spraying, and some of the bullets hit the school. They go into a lockdown, which is what they should have done. Okay, no big deal. Cops came, arrested him. Nobody got hurt. Everything was fine. Afterwards, obviously, you always do an after action, whether it's a drill or whether it's a real event. She sat down with her people. She found out that 1/3 of her teachers froze.
Yeah.
Froze. And they had done drills before. It wasn't like the first time. Froze. Just nothing. So you have no idea what's going to happen. And I'll talk about this also because it's very topical now. What you're having now and recently, let's go through it. Sandy Hook, principal came out and tried to confront the shooter. Marjorie Stoneman Douglas, gym teacher, came out and tried to confront the shooter. Nashville, principal comes out, confront the shooter. Iowa, one of the most recent ones, principal comes out and tries to talk down the shooter. They all got shot. They're all called heroes. No, they're not. They left the family. They left kids behind it. They're not heroes. There's this Alice training kind of incorporates this counter of countering the individuals. I don't know what it is about educators, and I apologize if I'm not generalizing it just for all educators, but for some reason, and I know principals are alpha personalities, they want to do something and not feel helpless, but to go out and try to talk down a shooter when you're unarmed, when you have nothing but your voice, you're not going to make it.
Yeah.
It's not going to happen. You have to stop this. And this idea, this also carries over to students. I'll be a hero. I'll save lives.
No.
You have no idea if you save lives or not.
Right.
You're dead.
Right.
You don't know if you saved lives. He just stepped over you and went on to the next one. So this idea that you need to go out there and confront this shooter, no, stop it. You're not a hero. You're not stopping anything. They're beyond that. They should have been talked about months ago,
right?
Not at that moment. This person didn't wake up one morning, grab the gun and say, I'm going to go shoot up a school today.
Right.
This was something that was planned months ago.
Well, and that's like what you and I were talking about before we came on as well, is how do you combat today? Because there's a lot of deranged people. And again, this kind of comes back to our kind of theme of our show is, today's world has gotten so screwed up and so far out of reality. And we're trying to teach dads and parents and everyone that listens to get back to the roots of what made this country great, how we raise strong kids, how we raise masculine kids. And it's the same thing as like the people that are going to do this are so deranged. They're not afraid of dying. In fact, most of them probably expect to die after they've planned this entire thing out. And so in preparing for this, like how do you prepare for something like this with a person who is willing and prepared to die? That's kind of another challenge in this nowadays today, because cameras used to do it where, I'm going to be on camera, I don't want to get seen, or I don't want my face seen if I'm that kind of thing, but they don't care anymore. So cameras don't cut it. Obviously, you've got like your outer and your inner perimeter security in terms of like roadblocks and your fatal funnel within a lobby to make sure someone can't get in or they're trapped in that area, that kind of thing.
Correct.
But in terms of preparations and understanding the mindset of someone who's so deranged and capable of doing this, who's ready to die, how do you combat that in these preparations and these plans? Can you?
It's tough, Dylan. That's not my avenue. But usually people my age bring up like, look, when we were kids, this wasn't even thought of.
Yeah.
We had guns in the back of our trucks and stuff. You never thought of
on school campus, right? You had a shotgun rack in your truck. Bring it to school. Nobody ever shot up a school back then.
No, it wasn't even thought about. If you're going to fight, you're going to fist fight.
Yeah.
You got problems. This is my opinion only. Look, number one, cell phones. They are the biggest bane of teachers and society right now with cell phones, because there's no reason for a kid to have cell phones in schools.
No,
there's no reason. Absolutely no reason. If parents want to be that helicopter parents, guess what? You call the front office. Hey, bring Dan up to the front. I want to talk to him. That's it. That's the way it was back then. That's the way it should be now. Social media.
Yeah,
it is
social
just
media
destroying these kids because the bullying, especially for girls, obviously. They depend more on, their looks and stuff on social media, but just that kind of thing. And that's what adds up to this. So the idea that, we can stop this, I don't know.
I don't think there's there's not a foolproof way to stop it. It's just, kind of preparing for the worst, hoping for the best. And I think it's changing the mindset, like you were saying, of the principals and the administrators from, trying to step out and be that hero to just following the logic of what works in terms of lockdowns and kind of preparations and that kind of thing, and just knowing what to do when shit really does hit the fan. And we haven't talked about, SROs or school resource officers as well.
Yes.
I know. Yes. So I was born and raised actually here in Wake County, which is, I want to say, one of the largest school systems in North Carolina. But all of the schools that I attended, we always had a uniformed school resource officer on site every day. We got to know them very well.
Yes. Two things that I mention always on a podcast is, number one, you keep yourself safe. Teachers, students, administrators, you keep yourself safe first. The good metaphor is when that oxygen mask drops when you're on a plane, you put that on yourself first, then you can help other people, whether it's a child or an elderly person. So you keep yourself safe first, then you can help other people. Because again, you're not going to confront anybody. You're not going to go out there and be a hero. If you're safe and good, then after this happens, then you can start helping people. So that's number one. Number two, armed resource school officers. They are probably, for me, the biggest issue and the biggest help of anything to do with schools. They go through intensive training, dealing with students, teachers and parents and administrators. That's what they're trained to do. And the argument you get, especially with the defund the police movement, when all this was happening during the pandemic, was, oh my God, no, the students, I don't want to see uniform. I feel oppressed. I need to find a safe space. I have a microaggression, whatever the hell. You know what? Tough.
Yeah. They
are not there to arrest you. They don't have arrest powers. The police will deal with it. These people are there to protect you if something bad happens. That's what they're there for. And they are an advocate. And I emphasize them constantly, that because we're fortunate here in Florida, the legislation did pass enough money to put a resource officer in every school, and it goes by population. So if we're up to 1,000, then you get 2 school resource officers.
Now, are the ones in Florida, are they actually uniformed police officers, or are they a separate? Okay, so the ones here in Wake County, at least when I was in school, were actual police officers that were assigned to our school permanently. That was their duty station on a day-to-day basis. They were a uniformed police officer, so they could arrest on site. They broke up fights a lot, and they arrested kids for fighting, and they were also there for kind of that first line of defense against any kind of major things like, shootings and things like that. So that was interesting, because I heard you mention that elsewhere, that they had no arrest powers, and I was like, interesting. I was like, ours was a actual like PD, like uniformed officer.
Well, that's a little different, and I understand budgetary reasons.
Yeah.
Why these police officers are there for whether it's overtime or they actually hire them for the schools with these arrest powers. But then you get into an area where the teachers depend on them for every kind of administrative thing. Hey, this kid's bullying. Hey, well, hold on, I'm going to get the police officer there to take. No. Yeah. That's a school responsibility. Those police officers are not there to advocate or to come in and be an arbitrator or something to bully some kid from one reason or another. That gets into an area where I don't particularly agree and that's a school thing. I'm not saying that I agree to have them there, but teachers will take that as they've got the backing. Oh, you're going to give me a problem? I'm going to call in Officer Smith here. We're going to take care of it. Right. And Officer Smith's like, oh my God, no, that's not my job. Yeah. So that's where you get the dynamic of that, have an issue. But still, yes, you got to have them in the schools. They got to be in the schools.
Well, I mean, and like even so, like, your book is called The First 5 Minutes. So even if the school resource officer is there, obviously he's got inside knowledge of at least the layout of the school, the blueprint of the school, the facility itself, the doors, the classrooms. He knows the layout. If he can cut down that, let's call it 5 minutes of an active shooter situation by half, by just responding in half the time that it takes the rest of a police department to arrive, then you've probably either saved lives or you've responded to the situation that much faster. And that's why I agree with you. I think having a school resource officer is one of the best ways they can help make those situations better. If, I guess, obviously, God forbid it ever happens. But what's interesting too is, so our son goes to a charter school here in Wake Forest, and I don't think they have a school resource officer, but now that I've talked to you, my next call is going to be to the school, asking what their plans are, asking what the types of drills they do, asking if they have a resource officer, if not, why, and those kind of things. And I think I would advocate our listeners to do the same thing. And I think that would be great steps into the progress of making sure that our schools are hardened and fortified better than they are today.
Yeah, no, I agree. And, I get also the feedback that, well, you're going to turn schools into prisons. And I tell you, it's a balance, because we don't want them to be prisons. They have to have the balance of being secure, but also be a welcoming environment. And, you'll get messages from the school about if something happens. And of course, they'll put in the education speak in there about, how caring they are and holistic and blah, 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 this kind of stuff, which is great. But, parents want the school to be secure. And, obviously I'm a parent, but I don't want to walk into have a prison either. So that is a tough balance. And I'm telling you, the world we live in, it's not going to get better. It's not something where we're going to say, okay, we got it. This is going to stop. It's not. It's probably going to continue to get worse. So that's why I stay away from those other areas and just concentrate on, I just want you prepared. That's all. It'll probably never happen. It's being basically struck by lightning or winning the lottery that it'll ever happen in your school. But if you're prepared, at least you're going to be safe. And just stay in a lockdown. Your kids are going to be safe. Everything is going to be fine. But this other type of drills that they're doing, no, you got to find out what's going on and tell the school stay away from that kind of stuff. Yeah. And I liked another idea too that you had in the book, at least in terms of using the students
at an older age, and not necessarily students as far as like, oh, you go and respond to the threat, but using the students as like a safety council. You like kind of like in the airport, you see something, you say something. Having students or some type of club or organization kind of frequently going around the school, checking doors, checking windows, checking for bushes and fencing, and finding loopholes in the system, so to say, because kids break shit. Kids are going to kick a door leaving the building one day and bust the lock on the handle, and then you've got a door that's unsecure and unlocked. But unless somebody reports it or says something, it won't get fixed, and then likely all the kids then now know, oh yeah, this door's always unlocked. You can just get in here anytime. It's not a big deal. So I really...
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
I was going to say, I like that was another aspect of a route that you could go through, is using some of the older kids to take some ownership of their school for the security and the safety of everyone else.
That's it. Ownership. They talk about, either school spirit, sports spirit. And a lot of these clubs now have come out because of whatever it's transgender movement or identity this or that. They want, to be a welcoming, and we're going to welcome everybody, and we want to make sure there's no bullying. All that's fine. But if you want to either get into law enforcement, in the military, or something along those lines, I still would encourage those kids that have the ownership of the school during your study period, whatever, walk around the school. Yeah. Tell the school resource officer, hey, Officer Smith, I'm just going to walk around the school and check the doors. They would appreciate that. They can't be everywhere at once.
Right.
Well, you're not snitching on anybody.
Yeah.
All you're doing is coming back saying, hey, the door outside classroom so-and-so is wedged open. What's going on? That's it. That's all you got to do. Now, this other idea of when we talked about see something, say something, the media obviously doesn't focus on this. You see very minor stories of school shootings being stopped, and they're stopped pretty much almost every day by either somebody saying to the school resource officer, this guy Johnny over here, he's talking about shooting. He's got these writings and all this. I don't know what's going on with him, but you need to check it out. Again, that's not snitching. You don't want 10, 20, 30 kids dying from whatever the heck this kid's talking about. So just say something. It's okay. Find someone you trust. I don't care. It's school resource officer, teacher, or whatever. Your kid is going to have a favorite teacher. Every kid has a favorite teacher. You can easily go to them and say what your concerns are.
Well, and at the same time, I think teachers and administrators, and I think you said this in the book too, is they also need to take some type of ownership and accountability for their school and the safety and security. So if you see someone walking through the school without a badge or without a lanyard or whatever the means of kind of, officially proving that you're a qualified visitor and that's been through the front office accordingly, even like you said in the book, if it's someone that's regularly there, some popular PTA mom, you still have to follow the rules. And I think it's up to teachers and administrators to enforce that. Hey, you don't have a badge. You need to go to the front office. You're not supposed to be in here without one. And they've got to constantly do that.
I tell you what, Dylan, it's the human element though.
Yeah.
A lot of people they're not confrontational.
Yeah.
They don't want confrontation. I was assigned, and I'm telling you the short story. I was assigned to high school by my superintendent. He said, hey, this high school up here, we've had some issues with people getting in and unauthorized people and stuff. You go up there and check it out. What's going on? He says, I'm kind of frustrated. So I go up there and I, hid my pass. I didn't have it on. I put on a baseball cap in case somebody recognized me, threw my hood up, and I walked on the campus because it's easy enough today to walk on a high school campus. That's for darn sure. I walked around for a good 30 minutes. Everybody, hey, how you doing? How's it going? I'm waving. I'm being friendly.
Yeah.
Students, teachers, how's everybody? Hey, how's it going today? Hey, nice seeing you. Anyway, after 30 minutes, I'm like, are you kidding me? Nobody stopped me. Nobody's questioned. Nobody even came up and said, do you need help? Anything, nothing. So it's near lunchtime before the lunchtime bell is going on, like 11:30. So I went around the back of the school and they had one of these open areas, like a workout area. It was all glass. And these girls were in there, the twirlers, whatever they call them, with the leotards on, the twirlers. And I'm watching them and stuff like that. And I was faking like I was taking pictures of them, right? Still nobody stopping me, nothing, not even questioning. What are you doing? Why are you taking pictures of these girls, right? So I'm like, this is ridiculous. I got to get out of here. I got to talk to the superintendent about this. So I start walking out towards the exit. And I see an assistant principal who I had met only once before. And he glanced over at me and he's walking with a bunch of other students. And he looked and he's okay. And he came towards me. And he did. He said, can I help you? And I, just quickly with my wit, I said, yeah, I'm looking for my car. He goes, and I completely threw him off. He goes, your car? I said, I know I parked out here somewhere. I said, I like visiting high schools. I said, you got a really nice high school here. I said, I was out back. I said, and there were these girls back there in these leotards, and they were doing these twirler things. And I took some pictures of them. Boom, he latched onto my arm, right? He goes, you're coming with me. And it was a great response. And immediately I took out my lanyard, I showed him my pass, and I told him who I was working for. This took like 3 times because he was just like so out of it.
Oh, yeah.
He goes, who are you working for? Wait, who told you that? So anyways, we get to the end, and finally he settles down and he recognizes who I am and who I'm talking about and why I was assigned this. And we're outside this big gated area. It was an entrance gate for cars, actually, but they had one of these little side gates that the students could get into. So we're standing there, and we're talking about security. He says, well, it's not really they usually have at high schools, our high schools, usually have 4 assistant principals, and each one's designated a different area. And he says, oh, our security person, we'll bring her down, the assistant principal. While we're standing there, a student comes up, right, and has a backpack. While we're standing there with the assistant principal, takes his backpack, flips it over the fence, it hits the lock, busts the thing open, and he walks right in. And I'm looking at him, I said, are you kidding me? And he just goes, yeah, I guess we got to fix that. I'm like, oh my God.
Oh, wow.
Well, this was years ago that I did this. And I believe it probably still goes on today.
Easily.
Because these kids are not naive. They know how to get through things that with locks and doors and stuff. They know this stuff, but they have to realize, like you said, situational awareness. People are watching.
Yeah.
There's always someone watching, bad guys, good guys, whatever. So it just, oh my God, it just was so, it opened my eyes too. And I hope it opened their eyes. I don't know if they got any better at this point, but yeah, you're right. I've had schools where they even told me, for deliveries, we don't actually lock the bolt lock. We just put it like it looks like it's locked. I'm like,
oh man,
well, why would you do that? Oh, because I don't want my head plant operator, going from way across the campus to come over just to open the gate for the delivery guy. Delivery guy's been doing this, for whatever, how many years. So we kind of leave it open for him. Okay.
Right.
I go up there one day and I'm sitting there and I'm like, I bet you that lock's not on. So I took the lock off and I walked in. This is elementary school. And I went to the picnic table and I'm sitting there and there's parents with their kids and teachers. Hey, hi, everybody. How you doing? And I look like a normal, I wasn't in my hood up or anything, like a bad guy. Again, like 30 minutes go by. And I'm like, are you kidding me? And I went to talk to the principal. And of course, their whole thing was, oh no, we train our teachers to challenge people. I said, really? That's a bunch of BS because nobody said anything to me. So I say this because I am complaining about teachers and we probably don't have many teachers listening or principals listening. But parents, just be aware that, there's stuff going on there that you have to be apprised of if you go visit your school. There's no reason for you as a parent, if you're inside that school and you see someone without a pass, for even you to say something. It's your school, for God's sakes, your child's school. Can I help you? I notice you don't have a pass on. Can I lead you to where the office is? Something that is not confrontational. You're trying to help the person. And it could be a bad guy. It could be somebody just trying to check things out. It could be some freaking pedophile, for God's sakes.
Exactly.
I had schools, Dylan. I had schools for years that during the beginning of school, during the entire school year for elementary schools, they would lead their children by the hand directly to the classroom every single day. And as soon as they dropped that kid off, no pass, nothing. As soon as they dropped that kid off, they got the run of the school.
Right.
So I'm like, what? My business where I came from, I don't trust anybody. I don't know what they're doing when they leave here, when they go home, what they're doing. I have no idea. So, and you don't have no idea who's bringing that child to school. It could be Uncle John. It could be the neighbor. Yeah. It could be pedophile Phil. I have no idea. So these parents would get into the school, or I say parents, the people would bring these kids into school. They got to run to the school. And do you know, I would go to these, another acronym, meetings, not PTA meetings. It was like a SAC meeting, student
advisory, something,
whatever it was. And do you know these parents? Oh my God, they read me the riot act. I moved to this area so I could do this. You're telling me I can't bring my child to school. I'm going to leave here. I'm going to sue you. I mean, this went on. And I said, finally I said, I had two parents up front. I said, it was a guy and a girl. Do you know the person sitting next to you? Well, I know, they have child so-and-so. I said, no, I mean, do you really know them? Well, no. I said, so if your child was molested by this person here, would that upset you? Well, yeah, of course it would. Well, I said, why leave that to potential to happen?
Right.
And it took like 2 hours of this meeting. Finally, I got like more than half of the building finally saying, oh, yeah, we agree with you. It finally clicked in their head that this is happening. So again, parents, be aware of what's happening in your school. If they're allowing people in without being checked, without any kind of pass, with free access, because I'll tell you, a lot of times you get these PTA members like we talked about that have been a PTA member for 20, 30 years, and they're allowed to roam around the school. No. Are you doing some kind of check on them weekly?
Right.
Monthly?
Yeah.
Ever? I don't know. Maybe they just went and raped somebody. I have no idea what these people are doing, and you're allowing them into school with no background check at all.
Yep.
Now they'll tell you, oh yeah, we did a background check. Well, when's the last time? Like 6 months ago. No.
It's got to be up to date. Yeah. No. I mean, complacency kills, right? There's a reason it's a saying. And I think back to the point with like the kid throwing his bag over the thing. I mean, path of least resistance too. And I think in preparation and getting ready for drills like this and putting lockdowns and instituting these things in schools, I think putting your mind in the frame set of someone who is going to follow the path of least resistance. It's even the same thing with like your car in a parking lot. Crime, most crimes and break-ins are crimes of opportunity, especially going into a school. If the opportunity is there to open a door and to easily get in somewhere, it's going to happen because criminals will follow the path of least resistance. They don't care about cameras and being seen and whatever technology you have. And now again, like you said, if it's a very targeted thing, then that kind of changes a lot of the dynamics of the situation. But if you can at least follow the 5 Ds of, what is it, like deter, hang on, I wrote it down, deter, detect, deny, delay, defend. That's what I take into consideration in terms of my home. Obviously, we're not going to be, fighting school shooters in a school situation unless you're law enforcement, but making it harder to get in, securing that outer perimeter, securing the inner perimeter, putting barriers in place, putting roadblocks in place, following procedures of making sure people are credentialed and approved to be in and around the school, especially like you said, during arrival, during lunch, during departure, because it's a free-for-all at that point, especially on like high school campuses. There's school, they've got athletics events going on over here, there's people coming and going, and you've got carpool and you've got buses and you've got kids coming in and out for clubs and practices and all kinds of different things. It's almost an impossible situation to control, but by having that lack of complacency, you can at least mitigate some of that risk, and that I think is what is the most important thing about it.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And one thing before I forget, I noticed we're covering a lot of territory here. I don't want people to actually concentrate so much on either worrying or, the idea that you may have a school shooter on campus, because what's happening on campuses more than likely is just going to be a weapon introduced. There's either going to be a knife, a gun, or something that's going to show up in the classrooms. It's happening more and more. And it's not so much, I don't want to be worried about it, but, you want teachers to be aware and parents to be aware. Look, we just had that one parent that got convicted for allowing her kid to have a gun in the school. What was her name? Crumbly, I think. Anyways, but this is something usually if you have a weapon in school, it's usually, I'm not a psychologist. It's either a kid's been bullied, there's gang things going on. It's something where the student just feels empowered by having that weapon. Not and it might even take it out, but just have something like that in case they get bullied, because there is so much bullying going on. And, that's when you're going to see more often a weapon, a knife, something in the school that may be introduced. So it's just that schools have to be prepared for that, even more so now than concentrating so much on school shootings. Yeah, absolutely. I appreciate it, man. I appreciate you coming on.
We'll put that link. Well, you said it was safehaveninternational.org. .org. Yes. Okay. We'll put that link into the show notes, as well as Dan's link to the book on Amazon, his LinkedIn page, any other social media or anything like that.
Facebook page too, for first 5 minutes. And that's usually just a bunch of the podcasts that I've had on there. And I know it probably gets boring because I say the same thing over and over, but it's just the idea that, look, this is something I don't care. One or two people pick up on this is fine. As long as it makes you change something that's happening in your schools, to speak up and say something. Don't be complacent. Talk to your kids. I got a 17-year-old. And you know how teenagers are. Yes, no, I got to get back to my videos, back on the phone. Pin them down. How are they doing the emergency drills at your school? Are you staying in a lockdown, or are they having you run out of the classroom? That's the main thing right away. What are you doing? Are you in lockdown, or are you running a classroom? Are they telling you to throw things at some shooter? Bam, red flag. Find out what's going on with this, because it's wrong.
Exactly.
It's wrong.
And even to like the point of a lot of the things that we talk about on the show here anyways, is if you raise your kids to be situationally aware and alert and kind of aware of their surroundings, they can tune into some of these things. The complacency won't be there. They'll understand a lot of the importance behind this, and they can start taking ownership and accountability for their schoolmates, their classmates, their school themselves, and become a leader. That's how you raise strong, masculine kids that will eventually become leaders in the world, is making sure that they understand the importance behind it, and then, constantly kind of refreshing that and reminding them of why it's important and why they need to drill and why they need to pay attention when they do it and take it seriously.
Yes, absolutely.
Awesome. Well, Dan, thank you so much for joining us today. I will put all the links in the show notes. If you guys want, please check out his book on Amazon. It's called The First 5 Minutes. You can buy it. Again, we'll put a link up to that. But that does it for today. You can check us out on our Instagram at Dadbod Brigade, our website, www.dadbodbrigade.com. And at that note, Dan, we are out of here. I appreciate the time today.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me on. I appreciate it, Dylan.
Absolutely. See you guys. Thanks.